Greetings folks, it's time for Past Planes number 15. This is the series of videos I do looking back at past planes, telling you what I think about them like months, even a year down the track. Because my initial reviews are really just maidens and initial thoughts. It takes a bit of time to really get to know a plane and work out whether you really like it or not. This little lot in this video will finish the year 2018, then we can start on 2019. There have been a lot of planes. All right, first up was a plane that I bought myself, Phoenix 1600, the original version. I bought this to use purely as a slope soarer because a lot of my flying friends already had Phoenix 1600s. They still have the motors on them, but I thought I'd make it up as a pure slope soarer without the motor. As such, I changed the bolt-down wing mounting system to rubber band mounting system. Much better for the slope. This version of the Phoenix 1600 has flaps. It's one of my favourite slope soarers. It's fast, it's aerobatic if you do a few mods. It's kind of difficult to do a loop, but I've added a little bit extra to the elevator to give it a bit more elevator authority, so I can do loops now, made it a little bit more aerobatic, but it's fast and it's tough and just the perfect sort of motor glider or motorless glider for the slope. The new version doesn't have flaps and it has a shorter fuselage. I think the long fuselage actually helps with the nice smooth slope performance of this version. There may have been a battery bay in there. I often take the battery bay out and just put Velcro down on the floor so that the battery can just stick down there, and I've got that's just a lump of foam that just stops the battery from sliding back. Favourite plane and highly recommended as your first slope soaring plane if you want to dip your toe in it. It does have the front mounted motor, so if you're going to keep the motor on it, you're going to put that into the sand and you know, ruin the bearings pretty quickly. So if you want a motorless sloper, this is a ripper. Highly recommended. Phoenix 1600 original version. Next up we have the Phoenix 2000 version 2. Another absolute classic plane, another plane that I will always have in my collection. We're going through all the Phoenixes today, by the way, in different versions. 2 metre wingspan, same blow moulded fuselage. It's a bit deeper, the version 2, a little bit more space in there. We have a landing wheel as well. 10x6 folding prop, a great thermaling plane, a great slope soarer, great for just flying around, having fun. Compared to the Radian 2 metre, the original, these were sort of the two main foamy slopers around at the time, I guess. The Radian is actually better at catching thermals, but that's only 3-channel, or it's only rudder, elevator and throttle. This one has ailerons, flaps, rudder and elevator, so you can play more with mixing, camber and reflex and crow and those sorts of things. This, in the V2 version of the Phoenix 2000, they kind of fixed up the wing design, the airfoil and the shape of the tips. The original Phoenix 2000 had a little bit of a sudden stall, a sudden tip stall occasionally. Not very often, but when it did stall, it was sudden and it wasn't that easy to recover from. And that doesn't happen with this version 2 Phoenix. This one has the click-in wing systems like all the version 2 Phoenix and Rangers have nowadays. I wouldn't hesitate to recommend it as your first thermal glider, your first full house glider. Cheap as chips and perform great. With this one I have left the battery tray in there, but I've just put Velcro on there, and again I'll put a sort of a foam blocker to stop the battery moving around. Spot for your receiver up the top there. As I said, highly recommended. It's a plane that I'll always have in my hangar, and I actually have a spare one over there in a box in case this one ever gets destroyed or lost or anything like that. So now we come to the Messerschmitt Bf 110. This was given to me, or the parts were given to me by my friend Chris. He bought a whole stack of wings and fuselages and tails from HobbyKing when they were basically getting rid of them for a few dollars, I think. The actual plane wasn't for sale anymore. It didn't have the full nacelles or anything like that, so I've sort of had to make up my own extensions with foam, with XPS foam, make up my own motor mounts. I'm not usually a big fan of World War II warbirds. They just don't do it for me, but I absolutely love this one with the twin engines and the rugged looks. It's well worn, I've broken it. Twin tails, I've sort of had to rig up a twin tail system there. For some reason I really like it. I kind of like hacked together planes, and this is a little bit like that, but it looks great in the sky. It's fast, it slopes well as well, as long as you take the props off. And we keep promising each other we'll get together so that we can fly our two BF-110s at the same time and try and get some air-to-air footage or some good side-by-side flying. Anyway, it's a rough old plane that you can't buy anymore from HobbyKing, I don't think. But for some reason, I just really like it. I'm running it on 4S3000. It has to be shoved right forward to balance it nicely. I think originally it was probably only 3S2200. But there you go, one of the few World War II warbirds that I actually like. All right, next to come was the Sonic model Mini AR Wing. The AR Wing is one of my favourite wings of all time. Whenever anyone asks me what wing they should start off with getting into wings, I always say the AR Wing. And this is the mini version. And it's, well, although it looks a lot like the AR Wing, it's kind of different, I suppose. It's got a tiny little motor and a tiny little prop on it. It's like a lot of the mini planes in that it just purrs around beautifully for really long flight times. I do have FPV on it. You can put a little flight control board in there, I guess, at the same time. A few of my friends have these as well, and a few of them have lost them due to a radical tip stall and spiral of death, possibly when they're flying too radically, too loaded up, or I think Mark Hoffman recently said they may have had too much up deflection in the elevon throws. But in its stock mild form, it's just a delightful little wing to cruise around, taking in the FPV views, chasing other planes. The only thing with these black wings is they're very hard to see when you're on FPV trying to pick them out from the trees behind. I find it really difficult. White things are a lot easier to see. But yes, I like it a lot. I'll hang on to it. The Mini AR Wing. Good fun little FPV plane. So next up we have the Ranger 2400, and this is a monstrous beast of a plane. I really, really like the Phoenix evolution in the 2.6 metre wingspan version. It's my favourite thermal glider. Does the job really, really well. It's the best thermaler I have, apart from the Radian, but that Radian's a bit simple and boring at times. So when these new 2400 wingspan Ranger and Phoenix came out, I was quite excited about them, but in the end I was a bit disappointed, I have to say. I don't have the Ranger as it was anymore. I still have the wing, and what I'm doing with it is I have a sort of a scratch-built pod and boom fuselage, and I made a centre section, what is it, about 30 centimetre centre section. So now I've got 2.7 metre wingspan, and this is an electric thermal glider. It works reasonably well. The thing with these 2.4 wings is they have a little bit of a tip stall tendency for some reason, which is really strange on a big wide wing like that. They're just not as good a glider wing as the Phoenix Evolution or the Phoenix 2000. That's sort of slimmer, thinner, just a better shape for a glider. This one is more of a heavy lifting wing, I think. And the Ranger 2400 came with ridiculous big bush wheels, which just were not suitable. They were mounted too far back on the plane, so it was just going to nose over every time you landed in grass or anything like that. Just didn't seem like a good design to me. It was a bigger version of the Ranger body, bigger tail fin, bigger rudder, more space inside. So I guess it would have been a really good long-range mapping camera setup, I suppose. That's just not a design that I really need. I don't like enormous planes, other than the 2.6 metre wingspan Phoenix Evolution, of course. In its Ranger form, I really didn't have a use for it, so that's why I sort of harvested the wings for this other project. It's a beast to carry around. This is one of the few planes I actually have to dismantle to put in the back of the car. Probably doesn't get as much use as the other planes like my Phoenix Evolution, Phoenix 2000, other gliders like that. But it gave me a chance to experiment with a balsa fuselage, carbon tube, tail boom, and 3mm laminated tail surfaces. The Ranger 2400, you would have to have a specific need for a plane that big, and it's not stellar performance, I don't think. It's pretty efficient, can cruise along at reasonably low current draw, but it's just so big. Big 2.4 wings seem to be quite draggy to me. I was looking for a better thermal glider, and it's just not a thermal glider wing. Okay, moving on, we have the, what is it? Skysurfer X9, I think it's called. It has been called various other things in previous lives. It's a bit of an odd one. I really like it, actually. It's a sort of the standard pusher motor glider setup, but it has sort of nice curvy wings, quite under-cambered wings as well. Lots of space in the front here. As it came, the tail servos were up mounted in the body here, and whenever you have your tail servos mounted there, it restricts what you can do with this space in here. So I have recently moved the servos down the back. I also tried it as a rudder elevator throttle only glider, and it worked very well like that. I just sort of bent the tips up a little bit more to give it the dihedral. I've since put the servos back in. Because I moved the tail servos back, I have a lot more space here, and I can use this for testing flight control boards with all this easily accessible space in here. So that's my plan for this one. I really like the way it flies. It's sort of lighter than the Bixler, lighter than the Skysurfer X8. It's a big floaty motor glider. Unfortunately, it's disappeared from Banggood, I think. And when it was on Banggood, they had the wrong photos on, so people were a bit confused about what you were going to buy. One photo had a V-tail, another photo had a slimmer fuselage, and another photo had this one here. It's kind of lighter and more flexy than say a Bixler or the Skysurfer X8, and slightly different shape, but I really like it. I've decided to hang on to this one, mainly because of the big sort of fuselage area in here, and the fact that I can put flight control boards and things like that in there. It's probably the lightest and the slowest of these pusher style motor gliders. Nice, I like it a lot, with a few mods. All right, now we come to a very special plane, and that's the Pietenpol from HobbyKing, and this is very high up in one of my favourite planes. Because my wife bought it for me, unknown to me. She realised that I was interested in it and bought one just before they went out of stock and never came back. So I'm so rapt to have this plane. I haven't flown it much. I've flown it a few times and I absolutely love it. It's just my kind of plane, this sort of retro, slow flying, great looking, beautiful planes. Big wheels, positioned well, with its centre of gravity, so it's going to land in reasonably, roughish grass, I suppose. But it's my only full balsa and film covered plane, so I want to treat it carefully. I never take it out when there's too much wind or bad weather or anything like that. It's a plane that I want to have hang on my wall for a long time, so I want to preserve it basically, but I still want to fly it too. I just love it, absolutely love it. Really like putting a camera in the cockpit and sort of panning around, stuff like that. And it's a big pity they don't sell it anymore because it's just a classic. Anyway, the HobbyKing Pietenpol, present from my wife, always going to be in my hangar and looked after very well too. So next up we have the ZOHD Dart XL swept forward wing, flying wing I guess it is, or Dart style wing. Now this was quite an interesting wing. It had some really strange additions like the little wing fences or flow organisers I ended up calling them. They weren't vortex generators, they were the wrong shape and they were too big for that. But they actually did work. I did some tests with, or they put little wind indicators on it and flew it around and stalled it and saw what had happened. I had one wing with the wing fences on and one wing without them on, and there was an obvious difference between the two. I thought it actually did organise the flow of the air across the wing and increase lift. And that, along with the swept forward wing, made the Dart XL one of the smoothest and cruisiest wings in the sky you can imagine. The onboard footage was like the camera was on a gimbal. Really smooth flyer, and it absolutely excelled at that. It was difficult to launch, and when you went fast it pitched up, so it was really designed for flying in that cruisy mode, and not much outside of that. It could fly really slowly because of the swept forward wings, and the flow organisers sort of kept the flow attached, and so the ailerons could work even though it was sort of partially stalled, I guess. And I actually just sold this plane yesterday. I hung on to it for quite a while. It sort of goes hand in hand with the Talon GT from ZOHD. Similar design ideas with the sort of the square boxy nose and the plastic front there, made from BEPP. Easy to disassemble, no gluing required. But in comparing the two, I much preferred flying the Talon GT, so I didn't really have a use for the Dart XL. Even though I hung onto it because often I hang onto planes just because a lot of people ask questions about them, so I kind of need them around to be able to refer back to them and take measurements and things like that. Interesting plane, had its haters, had its fans. I kind of liked it, thought it flew beautifully, but not too keen on the difficulty of launching it. You really need a really good throw, 3/4 throttle and sort of up at a bit of an angle, because they do tend to dip. All the darts seem to dip as soon as you launch them. And everyone managed to break the nose off, as did I. Had to glue it back on again, but once you realise this, it's not too bad. It was a great plane for a flight control board because you've got easy access in here. You can put the batteries in there, and you can. I've got a flight control board in there. See how you sort of got open access to everything, and they electrical connections going through to the wings, and you can pull them apart easily in the field. Take it to the field in a backpack and just sort of screw them together, basically. So, really interesting concepts from ZOHD. Maybe not totally perfected, but I'm sure they'll keep improving and bring out really unique products in the future. Next up, we have the Phoenix 2400. Same wing as the Ranger 2400 and same wing problems. It's not as good a glider as the Evolution 2.6 or the Phoenix 2000. More of a weightlifting, long-range FPV wing, I would say. So the Phoenix 2400 has got nice big tail surfaces to make up for the big wing. Again, it's got the landing wheel there. Different fuselage to the Phoenix 2000. Good space in there, all of that sort of stuff. Just that the wing kind of lets it down as a thermal glider, I think. Maybe it was never designed to be a thermal glider, but the 2000 and the Evolution definitely are. So I just assumed this would be too. Maybe it was never designed to be that. It just feels too big and chunky and draggy to me, but has its uses as a powered FPV flyer, I guess. So although I still have that, and I may hang on to it, it's sort of on the edge. It's one of those planes that I would consider selling if the time came. Next up, we have the Top RC Lightning, which is a beautiful, fast warmliner, I suppose. Brilliant sloper. It's not a thermal glider. It's slim. It's got dense foam. The wingtip's a little bit flexy, maybe, but yeah, it's low drag and speed is what it's all about. As it comes with the prop and motor that it has, it's a little bit mild. I think it could easily ramp up the power, put a bigger ESC in, put a bigger motor in, bigger props, and really push the speed to make it into a hotter warmliner, if you guess. But it's a brilliant fast sloper as well. I really like this. The problem is they kind of disappear. You can't buy them often. They seem to have disappeared now. A lot of people asking me where do I buy it from, but yeah, they just come and go. Top RC hobby. It has a really nice shaped tail and all flying elevator. Good tough design, nice and stiff. Got a plastic landing plate there. This is one I'm going to hang on to mainly because of its superb sloping ability. And finally we come to the Oken 1400, which is also called the Phoenix 1400. It's not a Volantex fan, although it's similar to the Phoenix 1600 in a 1400 size. It's a different design. It has quite a deep wing. I think it was 200mm wing chord, undercambered, foam body and folding prop. And it was actually a really nice little small sized thermal glider. It was light enough and the wing was sort of undercambered and high lift enough to make it able to pick up thermals quite easily. So I quite like this one. I didn't keep it because, well, I have too many thermal gliders and that was just never making the cut to go out for a fly, so I had to move that one on. But I can recommend it as your first sort of smaller thermal glider and folding prop tractor style glider. Similar to the Phoenixes, but not quite. And that takes us up to the end of 2018. That'll do it for Past Planes 15. Thanks for watching.